Get ready for a deep dive. And this one is a wild ride.
Yeah, this one is really something.
We're talking Manson family,
Always a fascinating topic.
but not just the same old Manson family stuff.
Right.
We're going deeper. We're going into the desert. We're going to meet this gold prospector.
A gold prospector who ends up kind of going toe-to-toe with Charles Manson.
Yeah. And this prospector may have inadvertently played a key role in the family's downfall.
It's a story that will make you think about, like, the power of belief, the pull of cults, and how people can be manipulated.
And even people who you think would never be manipulated.
Exactly.
I mean, come on, a gold prospector. It's not who you picture when you think cult expert, right?
No. Like, at first glance, you wouldn't think these two worlds would even collide.
Exactly. So to get into this whole thing, we're looking at a couple of articles by Scott A. Weiss.
Great articles.
One is called How a Mysterious Gold Prospector Deprogrammed Members of the Manson Family.
Which is a headline that really grabs you.
It really does. And the other one is How Juanita Wildebush Escaped Charles Manson's Murderous Sex Cult.
Gives you chills just hearing that title.
Right. So neither of these are your typical Manson family stories. You know, we're not talking about the Tate LaBianca murders or anything like that.
No, these stories offer a very different perspective on the family, especially their time out at Barker Ranch and Death Valley.
And we're seeing it all through the eyes of someone who saw through Manson.
This gold prospector, Paul Crockett.
So just to get everyone on the same page here.
Sure.
Charles Manson and his family, this was a very strange group, like almost mythical in a way.
Right. They came out of this really chaotic time in the late 60s.
It's easy to look back and think, oh, they were just hippies, but that wasn't really it.
No, not at all. Manson was dangerous. He was magnetic, sure, but he was hiding a very dark side.
He knew how to manipulate people, how to prey on their, what would you say, their insecurities.
Absolutely. He used whatever he could to gain control, drugs, religion.
He twisted the Bible around, didn't he?
Oh, yeah. He spun all these stories about the apocalypse, called it helter-skelter.
And this helter-skelter, that was his vision of a race war.
Yeah, it was all very delusional and dangerous. He truly believed he could start a race war, that society would crumble, and that he would come out on top leading this new world order.
And that belief, that delusion, that's what drove the family to murder.
It's what led to the Tate LaBianca murders, one of the most shocking events of, well, maybe of all time.
A permanent stain on the idea of the peace and love era. But what we're focusing on in this deep dive is what was going on before those murders.
We're going to Death Valley.
To this place of stark beauty, to Barker Ranch.
That's where the Manson family ended up after they left Spawn Ranch.
Because they were looking for something, right?
Right. They were searching for this supposed bottomless pit. Manson told them it was this hidden city.
A place where they could ride out the apocalypse.
The apocalypse that in his mind was just around the corner.
And that's where they ran into Paul Crockett.
Just your average, everyday gold prospector.
Well, not so average as it turned out.
Right. What a collision of personalities, right?
We've got Manson, who basically thought he was some kind of messiah.
On a mission from God.
And then Crockett, World War II veteran.
Flew in the Pacific Theater, saw some real action.
Found peace, or at least some version of it, in the desert, prospecting for gold.
And this is where it gets interesting. He was also really into metaphysics.
Okay.
And, wait for it, Scientology.
Hold on. Scientology?
Yeah.
Like L. Ron Hubbard's Scientology.
The one and only.
Wow. I did not see that coming. What does Scientology have to do with gold prospecting in the middle of nowhere?
That's the thing about the story. It's full of surprises. These threads that seem like they have no business being together.
It's true.
And yet here they are.
And Crockett's interest in Scientology wasn't just some, passing phase.
No, it was foundational. It shaped how he viewed the world.
The way he understood the mind.
And ultimately, it influenced his interactions with the Manson family.
So we've got this former WWII navigator turned prospector.
Who's way into Scientology.
Hanging out in Death Valley. How does he even cross paths with the family?
Well, it starts with two of Manson's followers, Juanita Wildebush and Brooks Poston.
And they were basically abandoned at Barker Ranch, weren't they?
Yeah, pretty much. Left to fend for themselves.
Now, Juanita, she was drawn to the family. She was looking for that sense of belonging.
Right, that sense of community, of purpose, something she felt was missing.
So here they are, feeling lost and vulnerable.
And in walks this gold prospector, a gold prospector who just happens to be into metaphysics.
Talk about an unlikely encounter.
Crockett could sense their vulnerability. I think he picked up on an unspoken fear.
And that's when he decides to intervene.
Yeah, but not in the way you might expect.
What do you mean?
He doesn't storm in and try to rescue them.
No big anti-Manson speeches.
No, he takes a much different approach.
What does he do?
He introduces them to a new way of looking at the world,
Yeah.
a way of thinking that starts to chip away at Manson's hold over them.
Huddle.
Very subtle.
Yeah.
And incredibly effective.
So we've got Crockett out in the desert, and he's basically trying to deprogram these two former Manson followers.
That's one way to put it.
But he wasn't using, like, conventional methods, right? It's not like he sat them down and made them watch a bunch of anti-cult documentaries.
No, nothing like that. His approach was much more organic.
Okay.
It grew out of his beliefs, specifically his belief in Scientology.
Ah, okay. So how does that play into it?
Well, there's this concept in Scientology called agreements. The idea is that we create our reality based on the agreements we make, both with ourselves and with others.
So, like, we agree to a certain version of reality.
Exactly. And Crockett, I think he used this idea to kind of dismantle the reality Manson had constructed around Juanita and Brooke.
He's fighting Manson with Scientology. That's wild. So how did that actually work?
It was subtle. He wasn't directly attacking Manson or his teachings.
Because that could have backfired.
Absolutely. Manson was all about intimidation, fear, but Crockett created this environment where Juanita and Brooks could question things, explore their own beliefs without fear of reprisal.
He gave them a safe space to think for themselves.
Exactly. He would talk to them about the nature of reality, about the power of their own intentions.
And I'm guessing he was also pointing out the inconsistencies in Manson's worldview.
Subtly, yes. He was planting these seeds of doubt, these alternative ways of seeing things.
So he's encouraging them to think critically, but was there any one thing, any specific technique that seemed to really get through to Juanita and Brooks?
Well, there is this one activity that stands out. It's called the energy ball game.
The energy ball game. Okay, now I know we're heading into some far-out territory. What is this game?
Now, bear with me because I know it sounds a little out there. Basically, Crockett would have Juanita and Brooks sit facing each other. They'd close their eyes and they'd visualize this ball of energy passing between them.
I'm trying to picture this. A gold prospector, a former Manson follower, someone who's lost faith in the family, all sitting in the desert, passing an imaginary ball of energy back and forth.
I know, it sounds a little crazy, but there was a method to the madness.
So it wasn't just a way to pass the time out there.
No, this game, which Crockett probably got from his Scientology background, was about mental training, cultivating focus, visualization, even a sense of agency.
It's like he was using this game to empower them, to help them reclaim the control Manson had taken.
Right. He's instilling this sense of personal power, which directly countered everything Manson was about. And this wasn't just some abstract concept for Crockett. He truly believed in the power of the mind.
He'd seen it firsthand, right, through Scientology.
Exactly. And that brings us to one of the stranger aspects of this whole story, the psychic barrier.
Yeah, that's the part where even I was like, come on, really?
It does sound pretty out there.
But we're talking about a group of people who were deeply entrenched in this world of, well, of belief, of suggestion.
Where?
Of fear, frankly.
Right. And what they feared most was Manson and his hold over them.
So, remind me again about this barrier.
So, Crockett, Juanita, and Brooks, they decided to create a psychic barrier around their camp. They visualized this energy field at the entrance to Goler Canyon.
And they believed that anyone who tried to enter with bad intentions, with bad karma, they would be turned back.
Yeah, basically.
And get this, it actually seemed to work.
Right, because Manson, he had this habit of leaving Barker Ranch for periods of time.
To go back to the city.
Yeah, he'd go back to LA, but then he'd always return to the ranch, except during this time when they were visualizing the barrier.
He tried to come back to Barker Ranch, but he couldn't.
Multiple times he tried, and each time something stopped him.
So was it some kind of mystical force field? Or was it just the power of suggestion?
It's impossible to say for sure, but the impact it had on the group, on their state of mind, that was undeniable.
They basically willed this barrier into existence, at least in their minds.
And in a way, that's all that mattered.
It's wild. So while all of this is going on, while Crockett is guiding Juanita and Brooks toward this new way of thinking, what's Manson up to?
Well, while things seemed relatively peaceful at Barker Ranch back in Los Angeles, things were about to take a very dark turn.
Manson was spiraling.
He was becoming increasingly paranoid, more and more delusional, and his obsession with the Beatles, It had become all-consuming.
The Beatles.
Yes.
Yeah.
He believed their music, particularly the White Album, contained hidden messages about an apocalyptic race war, what he called helter-skelter.
And all the while, the real world is closing in on the family.
Right. See, the police, they were already suspicious of the family, all their weird stuff.
Yeah.
The way Manson controlled everyone.
It wasn't exactly low-key.
No, not at all. It was all very alarming.
And then they really messed up, right? Setting that Earth mover on fire.
That was a big turning point.
Yeah.
Such a blatant act of destruction.
And that gave Sheriff Ward...
Inyo County Sheriff, Don Ward.
All right, Sheriff Ward, it gave him what he needed to finally do something.
It gave him a reason to move against them, but even still, it wasn't just the arson.
It was Crockett, wasn't it?
Right. He made a decision.
He talked.
He did. He went to the authorities. And I bet that was a tough decision.
Oh, I can't imagine. Going up against someone like Manson.
Manson was dangerous. He could inspire real fear, real loyalty, turning on him.
It's like signing your own death warrant.
Almost. But Crockett had seen what the family was capable of.
He'd seen that darkness firsthand.
He knew the danger they posed, not just to him, but to Juanita, to Brooks, to anyone who crossed them.
So what did he do?
He took a huge risk, contacted Sheriff Ward.
And told him everything.
He told him everything.
Wow. Did he believe him? I mean, did Zirf believe this story about a gold prospector, mind control, energy games? It sounds pretty far out there.
It does, but Crockett, he wasn't some crazy old hermit.
Right?
He was level-headed, he had life experience.
He'd seen some things.
War, the wilderness, Charles Manson.
So when he talked, people listened.
He laid it all out for Sheriff Ward. Described the danger, gave him specific details.
Dates, times, places, stuff that could be verified.
It all added up. Between Crockett's testimony, the arson, the family's increasingly bizarre behavior.
Sheriff Ward finally had enough.
He got a warrant, and that was the beginning of the end for the Manson family.
The raid on Barker Ranch, the arrests, the trial.
The whole world finally saw the truth about them.
It's really incredible when you think about it. This gold prospector, this totally unlikely hero.
He played a key role in taking down one of the most notorious criminals in American history.
All because he decided to speak out.
It really shows you the power of individual action, you know? The courage to stand up to evil, even when it's terrifying.
So what happened after it was all over? What about Crockett and Juanita?
Well, Crockett, he moved up to Washington State, got married, lived a pretty quiet life.
Lovely. After all that.
Yeah. He taught metaphysics, offered spiritual guidance.
And Juanita?
She went on to become a therapist. She dedicated her life to helping people escape cults, helping them heal, rebuild.
Wow. It's like coming full circle. Amazing that they both found peace after everything they went through.
It gives you hope, you know, even after facing such darkness. Healing is possible. Finding a purpose is possible.
Well, this has been quite a deep dive. Manson family, gold prospectors, Scientology, psychic barriers.
It's quite a story, full of twists and turns.
Makes you really think about the choices we make in life, right? The people we follow. The way our paths can cross with history in the strangest of ways.
It's true.
Sometimes the most extraordinary stories are hidden in the most ordinary places. And all it takes is one person's courage to change the world. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone.